Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to For StarCraft 2 Strategy. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Protoss strategy. Now in this replay, our Protoss player is Hasu, and our Terran opponent is Nani. So again, this is a Protoss strategy, and what we're looking at specifically is going for a Void Ray rush. I know a lot of people are going to hate me for this because dealing with Void Rays is a very frustrating thing, especially if you don't know how to properly handle them. Rest assured though, I will show you in the future good ways to handle Void Rays and proper things you can be doing. So again, this is going to be a Protoss strategy, and in particular it's the Void Ray rush. Now, I'll say a few things before we get too far into things here. In any sort of a build where you're going for a quick tech, for example, in this build we are going for a fast Void Ray, you're kind of neglecting that early army. That's something I've covered on before. I think it's something that's fairly obvious to you. In doing something like this, in going for fast tech and neglecting some sort of an early army, you are susceptible to early pushes. Clearly, that's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious intuitive leap there. Now, to deal with this, you do need to make sure you have some sort of defensive units. You do want at least a few units in your base early on to defend, but primarily the main thing that you need to do is make sure you scout. If you are ever going for a fast tech build and you are planning to get a fast, for example, as Protoss, if you're planning to get a fast Void Ray, or as Terran, if you're planning to get a fast Banshee, or as Zerg, you're planning to get fast Mutalisks, if you're doing anything of that sort, you need to scout. You cannot stay in your base, because if you don't scout, you will not see early pressure, and you will not know if some sort of an early attack is coming. And if you aren't aware of that, then you won't be prepared for it, and it's just going to wipe you out. So in going for these fast techs, make sure you scout your opponent. Make sure you have at least some good idea of what they're doing. Especially early game, it's really easy to tell what your opponent's doing because you can get in that scout, and you can look at what they have as far as structures are concerned, and that tells you generally what they plan to go for. So if you don't scout and if you don't see that early push coming, you will die. So you do need to make sure, again, you have some sort of defensive units and you have that scouting information if you plan to go for a fast tech build like this. Now, as you can see, we checked these two bases. We haven't found our opponent yet. We do finally move in to check our opponent's base. We're going to be moving in, and right now all we really see is a Marine. Okay, well that doesn't really tell us much, but the purpose of this is that we're going to try to keep our probe in a position where we're going to see a push coming before it gets too late, before it's too close to our base. Now, before I talk about any more of that scouting stuff, here you can see that Marine's going to be moving out. Before I talk about any more of that scouting stuff, we're going to go over this build order real quick. Again, this is the fast Void Ray, so we're trying to tech to a Stargate and get a Void Ray out as quickly as possible. At 9 supply, we went for a Pylon, and then at 13, we went ahead and we got our Gateway. 15 supplies when we dropped our Simulator. As soon as that comes up, you do, of course, want to saturate that. Now, once your Gateway's done building, you can drop your Cybernetics core. We did that at 19 supply. At 20 supply, we get our second Assimilator. Again, going for this fast Void Ray, it's going to be very gas intensive, so we do need to make sure that we have those two Assimilators up pretty early. Saturate that as soon as it comes in, and then what we're going to be looking is at 26 supply. That is when we're going to be going ahead to drop our starport. As you can see, that's coming down right now, and of course I meant Stargate because Terran players have starports. So we see our opponent moving forward with this one Marine. Now, what we did do is we went ahead and created a Stalker early game. That's going to do a pretty good job of fending off early pressure. The one thing you do and you will have to worry about with this early Stalker, you're not going to do very well if they come with some if they come out with some early pressure with Marauders. So make sure you have some sort of forward probe. Make sure you're aware of any push that's coming. I would, for instance, we do have this probe on this scouting Zelnaga tower right here. We weren't able to have this probe on this Zelnaga tower because there was, of course, a Marine taking control of it. So I would suggest having a probe somewhere outside of his base, so if a push were coming, you could see it in advance. Now, something else that I really want to note that's really important is we are getting this warp gate research. We started doing that at 28 supply. That's also when we dropped our second Gateway. Now that our Stargate has come in, we are going to go ahead and start chrono boosting in our Void Ray. We do want that out as quickly as possible. Never mind, we're chrono boosting our Warp Gate research because we want that out as quickly as possible. The reason being is this is kind of a two-pronged attack. We're hitting with the Void Ray, yes. We're going for that fast Void Ray, yes. But against Protoss players, Terran players typically are going to look to go for Marines early in the game. Unless they tech to a really fast Viking, which really isn't the best idea, because if we were to push out with a 2-gate push, then they would be in a lot of trouble. But unless they go for a fast Viking, typically what you're going to see Terran players do to counteract any sort of Void Ray rush is to go for some Marines, like a heavy force of Marines. So to counteract this, we're going to be getting Zealots, and we're going to be using that Warp Gate research in conjunction with these 3 gateways that we have here to warp in some Zealots inside of his base. So what we're going to see is we're dropping this proxy pylon right outside the base. We're going to be using these stalkers and this void right here, getting vision of the high ground, to defend if they were to see this and to try to kill us off. Now once this pylon is coming in, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and warp some zealots into his base and then move in with those zealots and our void rays. As you can see, that second void ray has just finished building right now. Now at this point we see a counterattack coming. Now he's kind of hesitant as to whether he should go back to his base to defend or if he should push towards us. Now unfortunately for him, he does decide to push towards us. As you can see, these zealots in conjunction with these void rays are just wreaking havoc on his base. Unfortunately for him, he decides to push against us, and what we do in response is we warp in one sentry. That is all the base defense you are going to need early game against Terran. Sentries are so strong. As long as you can make sure you can maintain your micro properly, keeping an eye on your void rays and your zealots inside of his base, as well as constantly keeping up this force field, you should have zero problem dealing with a counterattack. The major threat would of course be if he were to move his forces back into his base to defend against this, which would obviously in this scenario would have been the best decision, but he didn't know that we had sentries. In fact, lots of players won't have sentries at this point. Lots of players will be so concentrated on their attack of their base that they won't be able to handle going for warping and sentries inside of their base to fend off this rush. It is absolutely vital, though, that you keep those force fields up. If you let too many units eke through, they're going to just pop off your sentries, move into your base, and kill what you have. So we do need to make sure that we're able to do that. And then at some point, once we're finished mopping up his base, basically, we can go ahead and move our units back. But until then, I mean, as you can see, dropping force fields, nothing he can do about it. So again, as long as you pay attention basically in this position, if you're going for this fast push and he decides to try to counterattack, as long as you can maintain force fields, you're going to have zero problem dealing with it. Now, you may wonder what would happen in the other scenario if he had taken the forces that he had here, those Marines and Marauders, and pulled back into his base. Well, we could have still warped in more units. You have to realize that that's an option for us. We would have still been able to warp in units inside of his base, and with micro of the Void Rays, we could take out that army. It would be difficult with a huge mass of Marines like this, but if you can get your Void Rays amped up, basically, if you can get them to their third level of attack by attacking a building before his Marines engage, you will be able to take those out, especially in conjunction with warping in some of those Zealots here. So what our opponent is trying to do at this point is he's trying to build up this command center and lift it off so that he can get vision to the high ground and take out our sentries. Now, unfortunately for him, with some proper micro, that's not going to be possible for him. That's not something he's going to be able to do, because all we really have to do is keep our sentries back here and then force field, and then as soon as one's up, force field again, and he still will not be able to break in. Getting that vision isn't going to help if he's out of range of the sentries, and that's really all we have to do. So as you can see, he is moving forward with this. He's going to be trying to take out units. He did actually take out one of our Void Rays. That just goes to show you, when not fully ramped up, how strong Marines can be against Void Rays. Now, once fully ramped up, Void Rays do very well against Marines, but the problem is you need something to attack. You need to get to that third level of attack before that's actually going to be possible. So this is what I was talking about. He's trying to just get vision of the high ground and pick off our units, stop these force fields from being dropped, but all we really have to do is keep them back out of that range, and we should be all set. Again, very close to losing the Void Ray there. A little dangerous situation. And luckily what we're doing is we know that all he has is Marines, basically. He's got a few Marauders mixed in there, but we're just going to be massing up these Zealots in conjunction with these sentries and the Void Rays that we have. And even if he were to push in at this point and we didn't maintain this force field wall off, we would still be able to fend that off quite easily. We could just surround him with our Zealots and it wouldn't be much of an issue. Using this to our advantage too, we're able to tech up here. There's really nothing he can do at this point, again, because we took out his base so very early. All he has is this. He could go for an expansion right now instead of going for this kind of all-in trying to take us out, but he's so far behind it wouldn't matter. If he had, instead of going for trying to lift this off to get vision to try to take out our army, if he had tried to just expand, it would have just taken one scout to find that expansion and we would have wiped him out so early. Well, losing so much time gathering resources, we would have been at such a giant advantage, it wouldn't have been much of an issue. So again, I really do want to emphasize that, yes, in this particular replay, our opponent, instead of pulling back to their base when we pushed out with these Void Rays in conjunction with warping in those Zealots, instead of pulling back to his base, he did decide to go for a counterattack. The important thing is to just make sure that you get a sentry up and you can maintain those force fields all day with a handful of sentries. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's like 5. Someone's going to and make fun of me in the comments and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I just don't know off the top of my head what it is, but there is some number of sentries that you can constantly maintain a force field, and there's nothing they can do about it. Unless they can lift off over it or get a massive unit to crush it, you can stay safe inside your base from any sort of a counterattack. But if he had pulled back to his base, the thing I want to emphasize is that if you had gotten your Void Rays to the full level of attack and continued to warp in Zealots inside of his base, we would have been able to prevent that counterattack from taking us out. Basically, since we caught him off guard while he was pushing out towards us, it was just pretty much game over at that point. So yeah, guys, again, this has been a fast Void Ray tech build, also utilizing that Warp Gate research to get Zealots in this base to take out any Marines that would counteract our Void Rays. Gonna go over that build order real quick. We started off with a 9 Pylon, followed it up with a 13 Gateway, then followed by a 15 Assimilator. At 19 Supply, we went for a Cybernetics Core, and then at 20 Supply, we got that second Assimilator. Again, a gas-intensive build. We do need that second Assimilator pretty quick. 26 Supplies when we dropped our Stargate, and at 28 Supply, we got our second Gateway, as well as started researching our Warp Gate tech. Now, we saved all our Chrono Boost and tried to get that Warp Gate tech as quickly as possible. We dropped that Proxy Pylon, warped in Zealots inside of his base, moved out with those 2 Void Rays, and as you saw, we were able to easily take out his base. It wasn't much of a problem. With that counterattack that he had, all we had to do was warp into 1 sentry, drop that force field, then warp in additional sentries after that to maintain that force field, and there was nothing he could do about it. So again, guys, this has been for StarCraft 2 Strategy. If you guys like our videos and you like what you see here, please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. So as you can see, our Warp Gate research has just finished, and because of all of our probes on this mineral line here, we do have enough to warp in our initial 4 Zealots, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now with these 4 Zealots in our opponent's base, it's going to be very hard for them to deal with this unless they went for the same build, or if they went for a 2 Gate.